narcissistic personality disorder is more than just excessive self-love or vanity, as it's frequently misunderstood. NPD is a serious mental health condition that shapes the way an individual perceives themselves and interacts with the world, often causing significant emotional, psychological, and relational damage. Throughout this video, I'm going to delve into the symptoms and diagnostic criteria of NPD, the behavioral tendencies of those affected by it, the broader harm that NPD can inflict on others and society as a whole, the treatment options available, and resources for those who've been victims of narcissistic abuse. So to start off, narcissistic personality disorder is one of the cluster B personality disorders as categorized by the DSM-5. If you're unfamiliar with the term DSM-5, it stands for the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. Personality disorders in this cluster are marked by dramatic, overly emotional, or unpredictable thinking or behavior. In the case of NPD, individuals exhibit an inflated sense of self-importance, a constant need for excessive admiration, and a striking lack of empathy for others. While narcissistic traits may appear in individuals occasionally, especially under stress or if they're insecure, for someone diagnosed with NPD, these traits are persistent and pervasive. Their sense of entitlement and grandiosity colors nearly every aspect of their life. And people with NPD often believe that they're superior to others, and they expect to be recognized as exceptional, without corresponding achievements to justify such recognition. They can be preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. This grandiosity often results in a lack of genuine connection with others, as they see relationships as means to an end, a way to fuel their need for validation and admiration. They're also highly reactive to criticism, often responding with anger, denial, or attempts to undermine the credibility of anyone who challenges them. These reactions are deeply rooted in their need to protect a fragile ego that can't tolerate even the slightest wound. One hallmark of NPD is the tendency to take credit for successes, but never assume responsibility when things go wrong. This isn't merely a quirk or minor flaw, but a deeply ingrained defense mechanism. Because individuals with NPD believe in their inherent superiority, they find it nearly impossible to acknowledge their own failings. When something goes right, they're quick to take all the credit, usually minimizing or outright ignoring the contributions of others. But sure enough, when something goes wrong, their instinct is to shift blame, deflect responsibility, and manipulate the situation so that they're never held accountable. They'll use others as scapegoats or make excuses, maintaining the narrative that they're flawless. This lack of accountability can make them difficult to work with in professional settings and downright toxic in personal relationships. Gaslighting, a form of manipulation where the narcissist makes others doubt their own reality or memory, is often employed to preserve their ego and keep others off balance. absence of shame. Most people, when they hurt others or fail in some capacity, feel a sense of guilt or shame that leads them to reflect on their actions and make amends. In contrast, individuals with MPD tend to suppress or just ignore feelings of shame because admitting fault threatens their grandiose self-image. Rather than experiencing the humbling emotion of shame, they may project their insecurities onto others, blaming them for perceived shortcomings. This makes it incredibly difficult for them to maintain healthy relationships, as they rarely feel remorse for their actions, no matter how damaging they might be. The lack of shame and accountability among individuals with MPD is especially harmful in relationships. Their romantic partners, friends, family members, and colleagues may find themselves constantly catering to the narcissist's need for attention and validation, often at the expense of their own emotional well-being. Partners of narcissists in particular may be subject to an emotional roller coaster. In the early stages of a relationship, the narcissist may idealize their partner, showering them with attention, compliments, and affection. However, once the narcissist's need for admiration wanes, they may begin to devalue their partner, criticizing or belittling them, and leaving the partner feeling confused and hurt. This cycle of idealization and devaluation can leave the victim feeling like they're never enough, perpetually striving to please someone who will never be satisfied. In familial settings, narcissistic parents can inflict lifelong harm on their children. A parent with MPD may see their child as an extension of themselves, expecting the child to fulfill the parent's unmet needs for validation, success, or admiration. These children often, but not always, grow up in environments where they're either idolized or dismissed, depending on how well they serve the narcissistic parent's ego. The constant pressure to live up to the parent's expectations, combined with emotional neglect, can lead to significant emotional scars. Children of narcissists may develop perfectionistic tendencies, anxiety, low self-esteem, or, in some cases, narcissistic traits themselves, as they struggle to cope with the parent's inconsistent and manipulative behavior. The impact of narcissistic personality disorder extends far beyond the personal sphere. When individuals with MPD occupy positions of power, whether in politics, business, or leadership roles, the consequences can be far-reaching. Their inability to take responsibility, combined with their need for constant admiration, can create toxic environments where unethical decisions are made and others are manipulated to maintain the narcissist's control. Narcissists in power often make decisions based not on the greater good, but on what will preserve their image or enhance their sense of superiority. This can lead to corruption, abuses of power, and a culture of fear and distrust within organizations. Now that we have a clearer understanding of the traits and behaviors associated with MPD, let's look at treatment options. psychotherapy with the goal of helping the individual develop a more realistic and balanced self-image. Psychodynamic therapy, which focuses on understanding and resolving the unconscious conflicts that fuel narcissistic behavior, can be particularly effective. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, may also be helpful as it works to challenge and change distorted thinking patterns and behaviors. But, as you can imagine, one of the greatest challenges in treating MPD is that individuals with the disorder usually don't recognize that they need help. Their grandiosity and lack of introspection prevent them from seeing their behavior as problematic, which means they're unlikely to seek therapy voluntarily. In many cases, individuals with MPD only seek treatment when they face significant life crises, such as the breakdown of a relationship, loss of employment, or legal problems. Even then, the therapy can be a long and difficult process. It requires the narcissist to confront the insecurities and vulnerabilities that they've been working their entire life to hide. It requires a willingness to engage in deep self-reflection and to accept that they're not as superior or flawless as they believe themselves to be. Now, in some cases, medications such as antidepressants or mood stabilizers may be prescribed to treat comorbidities such as depression or anxiety, but there is no specific medication that can directly address NPD. The primary form of treatment remains psychotherapy, and the success of that treatment depends heavily on the individual's willingness to participate fully in the therapeutic process. For those who have been victims of narcissistic abuse, the path to healing can be long and complex. Survivors of narcissistic abuse often experience emotional trauma, low self-esteem, and difficulty trusting others. It's common for survivors to struggle with feelings of confusion and self-doubt, especially if they've been subjected to gaslighting or other forms of manipulation. Rebuilding one's sense of identity and self-worth after enduring narcissistic abuse requires time, support, and oftentimes professional help. Therapy is a valuable resource for survivors of narcissistic abuse. Trauma-informed therapy can help survivors process the emotional and psychological impact of the abuse, understand the dynamics of the narcissistic relationship, and learn to establish healthy boundaries moving forward. Cognitive behavioral therapy can also be helpful in addressing the distorted thinking patterns that may have developed as a result of the abuse, such as feelings of unworthiness or self-blame. Support groups can also provide a valuable source of validation and community for survivors. Connecting with others who have experienced similar forms of abuse can help survivors feel less isolated and offer practical strategies for coping and healing. These support groups can be found both online and in person, and they provide a space for survivors to share their stories, gain insight, and offer encouragement to one another. In addition to therapy and support groups, educating oneself about MPD and narcissistic abuse can be an empowering step in the healing process. Understanding is that the abuse was not their fault. There are many books, podcasts, and articles available that delve into the topic of NPD and offer guidance on how to recover from narcissistic abuse. Practicing self-care is also essential for those recovering from narcissistic abuse. After enduring the emotional manipulation and control of a narcissist, it's important for survivors to reconnect with themselves and prioritize their own well-being. This may involve setting firm boundaries, reestablishing connections with supportive friends and family, and engaging in activities that bring joy and fulfillment. As I've covered in a previous video, self-care can take many forms, whether it's mindfulness practice, physical exercise, creative expression, or simply taking time to rest and reflect. It's a vital part of the healing journey as it allows survivors to rebuild their sense of autonomy and self-worth. Narcissistic personality disorder is a deeply rooted and complex mental health condition that affects not only the individuals who have it, but also the people and systems around them. Those with MPD exhibit traits of grandiosity, entitlement, and a lack of empathy, often taking credit for successes without assuming accountability for their actions. Their inability to feel shame or remorse allows them to inflict significant harm on others, particularly in personal relationships.